Good evening and welcome to Take Two. I hope you guys are doing well there at home. I am here with Randy. Want to let you all know that this will be the last Take Two for this year. We will look into the new year and see what we do differently. We've got some thoughts in mind of where we might go, but we will not be meeting together on Wednesday nights for the rest of this year, which is just November and December, so like 8 Wednesdays or so. Anyway, we'll remind you again on Sundays, and we'll have some notices about that. But just so you know here online, we won't be here next Wednesday doing Take Two. I'm sure we're going to have some other things going on. I forget when our pact is meeting and some of the other things going on, but we'll keep you posted with those things going on. Well, last week I talked about singularity, having focus, and where it comes into the area of our finances, our monetary availability to God, I guess. And so let me read the passage from Matthew 6, verse 19, and then we can kind of talk about that. I've got a passage in Luke that I'll read too, just because I spent a lot of time on that Luke passage, as I felt it was a little bit more kind of in our face than even this one in Matthew. But Matthew 6:19, Jesus says, "Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy and where thieves break in and steal, but lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven where neither moth nor rust destroys and where thieves do not break in and steal. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. The eye is the lamp of the body, so if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is the darkness? No one can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money." And we'll stop there before we go into the Luke's passage and kind of talk about this. Let me get your thoughts just on this passage or on some of the things shared, questions, or things that kind of came to mind for me.
All right. So I think this is, again, it's the Sermon on the Mount. So you've heard this taught probably if you've been around church for any amount of time, and you have all these kind of ideas that you've built up. Mm-hmm. Like I said before, last time I was here, I've taught the Sermon on the Mount several times too. So then you kind of go like, oh, what did I teach and what was I thinking? Because it's just different. I think, some of the beauty of the scriptures of this ancient book is that as we kind of get to know the life and times of Jesus, the more we understand what he was saying. Mm-hmm. And because words are words, and we often try to take what he's saying into our own context and not think about the fact that the culture was completely different 2,000 years ago. So that's the disclaimer for starting out every time. But I think that this idea, and you said a couple things I thought were interesting, and maybe we'll touch background on some of these things too. But the idea that, like you said, he's giving basically a few examples of the same thing, but giving us to us in different perspectives, which he kind of does often when he teaches. Mm-hmm. So that's not unlike Jesus, but it is interesting. So, like, this idea of the evil eye, mm-hmm. right? Or the way this is this the ESV that you're reading from?
Yeah,
he calls it like a bad eye.
Yeah, the eye is healthy, or if your eye is bad. Yeah.
So that same kind of concept, the way you see things, the way you serve or hold on to things. Mm-hmm. It's all very interesting in that our culture now, not Jesus's, is all about hyping the wealthy, right? It's all about promoting them to the hero in our society. A friend of mine posted this on Facebook last night. He said, if you could swap brains with somebody for a period of time, who would it be? And most people were picking like Elon Musk or Donald Trump, or you know what I mean, like these are the people that
Yeah.
the high and mighty of our society that we think, oh, I want to pick that guy's brain. And that's
Interesting.
interesting.
Yeah, because that really leads into the power and the one who has control. And yeah, I mean, I think, the idea of treasure and the idea of, earth and heaven is important to understand, where the will of God is displayed or where the wills of men are displayed. And then seeing, the wills of men promote Elon Musk or the Bill Gates or the people of power, where you might think, well, the treasures of heaven and like someone like Mother Teresa, or you know what I mean, someone who doesn't. I mean, I think it was my daughter shared with me, or someone did. Gosh, there was a lady in Russia who rescued all these orphans, and she ended up dying basically alone. But the amount of children she rescued from orphanages and placed in homes is just astronomical. And no one knows who she is, but just this finding out about this woman is like, wow. And so there's like an example of treasures in heaven, right?
Yeah.
God cares about the orphans. God cares about those who are put aside. But we care about the Elon Musks, right? Because they get the airtime,
They get spaceships.
Yeah. Who wouldn't want spaceships? But then, like I said, I think that he's saying three different things, or one thing three different ways. He's saying treasures in heaven, treasures on earth. I is healthy, I is bad. You can't serve two masters, right? You're going to love one, hate the other. And in that Eastern culture, an evil eye was a greedy eye, was an eye of scarcity, right? Saw that there was a need to hoard for self. And a good eye was an eye of generosity, an eye that saw that there was enough and was generous, right? And so I think that fits into kind of what he's saying here and having that understanding. And if your eye, is how you're seeing the world, how great is the darkness if you're seeing a world of scarcity, if you're seeing the world with the need for greed, then how much does it affect everything of your life? And I think that's what he's trying to get to.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, because we tend to, greed is one of the big 7 sins, I mean?
Yeah.
But we have a funny relationship with greed in our society too, because we kind of value it.
Yeah.
We might say we don't like it, but the companies that we spend our money at, the corporations, the people in power, this is a value that they behold.
Yeah, and I was listening to someone who was talking about just when we started, taking land from the Native Americans. One of the things that was written down was the reason we justified it was because they didn't have enough drive to prosper or to move forward. Mm-hmm. It's like, no, they don't have enough drive. They're content where they're at, living on the land, all happy. What's wrong with them, right? They didn't have enough drive to push into this whole new age that they saw coming, right? Yeah. And so that was their validation to do what they did, because they didn't have. You could say that was greed, right? They wanted more, and these people were being too content. Yeah. And so interesting that would be the case.
It's also interesting because you have, like, Alex shared her story on Sunday morning. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't say, Brian joked around and said he has a little evil eye going on. I wouldn't say that, there's people who are wise with their money, or people who grew up in a household where, I always think of we used to have this dog named Razzle. He was named after a drummer. Anyways, he was the runt of the litter, which is why my sister loved him, because he was the little guy that couldn't get into the food bowl while the other dogs were eating. But I just remember there was like the alpha boy, the alpha dog, the little puppy that would put his feet in the food bowl while he was eating. So like I'm taking up as much room as I possibly can, and all the other dogs are trying to scrounge around him or whatever. But in the situation where like where the food is the gold and everybody's trying to get a piece of it,
Yeah.
just because you get a little bit and you like hold on to it or whatever, I don't think that makes you greedy. So scarcity is that's one of those things where sometimes I know families who have lots of kids and their kids all kind of feel like,
Yeah.
got to eat first because my big brother's going to eat it all if I don't get mine or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, scarcity doesn't necessarily lead to greed.
Right.
Yeah, definitely. That's a good point. It can, if you see the world as not having enough, it'll change how you live into it. But maybe it'll show more of who you are at that point. Because I know people who have little but are very generous, with what they have. And a lot of times if you've traveled to other countries, you go someplace. We went to Haiti one time and a family served us a meal. And this meal, was a lot for them. And there was like 5 of us there. And this meal was probably more than they would eat in a week. But they produced it for us, and you're just like, oh man, part of you feels terrible, just taking so much from them. And then part of you wants to honor their generosity, but here's people who are scarce but have big hearts,
Yeah.
and are generous. And so I think
That was really a big value in Jesus's time too. Was
Yeah.
that idea of like, we're going to, we're going to kill the fatty calf kind of thing, right? Whenever there's a guest or,
yeah, definitely a part of that culture. If someone invites you, to come in, or if you invite yourself, hey, let me have this, you weren't supposed to put someone away.
yeah,
So, yeah, I mean, and how important that is then in this context, when you start seeing people who would have this idea of, nope, you can't have it, or nope, it's mine, that mine mentality, where it just keeps coming back to you
yeah,
and kind of driving to you. And let me read the Luke passage, because this kind of jumps into it more, kind of springboarding from what you're saying here. Money is not evil. Scarcity is not evil, right? It's really how we live into it, kind of like what Brian and Alex were talking about. There is the ability to just spend and spend and spend and mine, or there's the ability to take this, be wise with it, and now have the ability to do more with it, right? And so Luke 14:33, Jesus says, so therefore, any one of you who does not renounce all that he has cannot be my disciples. And I broke that up a little bit, in understanding the phrases that he's saying. To renounce is to say goodbye. If you don't say goodbye, and the idea to all that he has is all the things that you hold, right? All the things that you are holding in relationship with, and does not have the power, basically, to be my disciple, right? Because your power is being expended holding up the things that you need or want. That's kind of the idea of it.
yeah.
So, those words always strike me, right? Those words are always convicting.
Yeah.
I always hear those words and I'm like, okay,
Because you start taking inventory. Like,
yeah, immediately you're saying,
what am I putting? What am I serving, essentially?
yeah,
Because that word too, like back to Matthew just for a second, that idea of serving two masters isn't necessarily saying you can't, like you said, money in itself is not evil, right? But he's saying you can't serve them both, or maybe some translations might say worship them both. But it's not saying you can't let one serve you while you serve another, right? So that kind of the idea of servanthood, I think, or being beholden to a debtor, the scripture that Brian brought up, or the custom-made couch or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we allow ourselves, or in my case, a Telecaster that's in my closet that I've never even played. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, but it's like, the light comes on. I'm like, there it is.
Yeah.
I own that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But does it own me? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You have to ask. You have to take stock, I think, because can put we can become beholden to um, furniture or people,
Yeah. Or church, right? I
or,
mean,
or our own culture.
yeah, it could be religion too. All
Yeah.
these things can have hold of us, and I think that's an important thing. Is Jesus isn't telling us we have to give up things. He's telling us that we have to maybe give up the relationship that we have with some things, the relationship that is unhealthy, that is holding
Yeah.
us, or we're holding on too tightly and not willing to let go. What happens when you know Judah spills the juice on the couch? What am I going to do? Am I going to have a fit? Am I going to, lose it? Or who am I going to respect more, the couch or my grandson? And it doesn't mean I shouldn't try and make him stay off the couch. But, when something happens, and it's going to happen eventually, it's furniture, it's going to happen. What do I do? There's nothing wrong with being careful, nothing wrong with, having his little table, you sit over here. But what is it that I really value more? And what happens when that relationship is tested? Those things happen, or, like the guitar, finances get, difficult and you have to sell it. Those kinds of things. It's like, okay, is it holding on to me where I need to put food on the table, or I can have this guitar in my closet?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like you're
Yeah.
making those decisions. And then the idea of the kingdom of heaven comes into that play. It expounds even more. It's like, it reminds me of like Schindler's List, when, at the end of the movie, he's like, this ring could have saved like one more person.
I thought about Schindler's List when you're talking about the Russian lady and the orphans.
Yeah.
It's like those
Yeah.
people.
Yeah, it's
those
like
people.
this could have helped one more person if I would have done more, in spite of all that he did. This idea of I could have done more. And so I think we have to weigh those things, right? It's like there's not the you have to do it. It's just, where's the allegiance?
Yeah.
Where is the awareness?
Yeah, and that's a good. I always try to have that kind of mindset shift where it's like, I don't have to do it, but I get to do it.
Yeah.
And one of those things is way more powerful than the other.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to that relationship I talk kind of about, when you have a relationship with exercise and you like to do it, then it's not a difficult thing. If you don't have a relationship with it and it's a burden or a labor, then it's hard to keep it up because it's a chore. It's not something that you want to do. And I think there's a lot of things in life like that when, it comes to helping someone out financially or doing something, even like what, Brian and Alex were saying, all of a sudden it was like, look, we can do this with our money. We can help these people. We can be generous. And it was like, oh boy, we get to. It wasn't like, oh man, but I could get another, love seat, or I could get, another guitar. It's like, I'll stick with the furniture. You can, because I've got enough guitars too. I'll just stay out of there. But it becomes something where it changes your whole perception of how you're looking into it, right? Now I see needs. Now I see the ability to meet needs, or else again I see what I want, and this takes away from what I want.
Yeah.
And how do I measure it?
Yeah, and I was thinking about this, and I wonder what you think about it, because James talks about a similar thing, right, in the first chapter, where he talks about single-mindedness, essentially having this kind of same idea, and he talks about, asking for things in prayer, for example, and not doubting, but having a single-mindedness. Do you think this relates in any way?
Yeah, I think so. I think that the single-mindedness that James is talking about has to do with the life that God is wanting us to live, right? I think, ask and not doubt. Why wouldn't you doubt? Well, because I know this is who God is, and I know this is what God wants. He also says that everyone is tempted when he's drawn away by his own lust, right?
Yeah.
And so that idea of lust again is the desire for, and so he's comparing this idea of the singleness of the mind and the double mind or double,
Yeah, he calls it double
yeah,
mindedness.
double mindedness. I think it's similar where the singleness of mind is the mind that's in line with the kingdom, the treasure in heaven kind of thing, and the double minded is the one that sees, wants, and that's what struggles. It's not like, oh, I really pray that I'm healed. Oh, but I doubt it. Oh, that's it. I'm over. I think it has to do with those two kind of ways of living into who God is.
I think so too. But then the next kind of like place my mind goes is like, so then Jedi's couldn't get married because they had to have a single focus. So where do we go? Like, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I need a new car. Am I now stepping over the line? You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's where, I don't know if it was 2 weeks ago where I talked about the will of God is pretty open,
Yeah.
right? I don't think it's a tightrope we have to walk. I think, it's do good, love justice, love mercy. That's kind of it.
Yeah.
And if you can do that with your car, then great. If you're, if I'm buying a car and in my mind it's like, you know what? I know that, this person in my family is struggling and gonna lose their home or get kicked out of their apartment because they can't make this month's rent, but I really like this car. Those kinds of things. If that comes to your mind, if that is a scenario, and I'm weighing those things, then I need to weigh that heavily. I need to see what is more important to me and be careful not to justify it. Well, if they wouldn't have, bought that, whatever, then they would have enough money for this. We can justify a lot of things, even like the Pharisees did, where, oh, this money is dedicated to God, so I don't have to give it to my parents, right? I don't have to take care of them
Yeah.
because it's Corbin. It's dedicated to God. So now I get to use my spiritual language to justify myself.
Yeah.
But I think those things happen every now and then to me, where I get challenged with how I'm going to do things, what I'm going to do with money.
Yeah.
If I'm going to be generous or not. And I feel like happy people are generous people, right? At least most of the ones I know.
Yeah.
They're pretty generous. I mean, and again, it doesn't matter the amount of money they have. The generosity seems to lead to this, I don't know if I'd call it carefree, but just overall joy, it seems like, that comes from not having that. And I think that's the whole minimalist kind of
Yeah.
thing.
I mean, definitely, like you said, if you travel the world and you go to, a country that's not quite this developed, right? And you
Yeah.
see kids playing in their underwear outside and they're like having the best time ever.
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, I didn't laugh like that when I was 7. You know what I mean? Like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
But and you hear those stories constantly from people who
Yeah.
travel, or if you've ever been to Mexico or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
you see that stuff all the time, and not just in other countries. You see it here too. Like in
Yeah.
poor communities, people know how to live. You know what I mean? People know how to enjoy what they have.
Yeah.
But there is the pull for, I'll speak for myself. There's definitely the allure of like nice cars, big houses, like those types of things. And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But you have to, like you said, I think there has to be some kind of like, I don't want to say has to. We get to
Yeah.
decide based on kingdom principles how we do with those things.
Yeah. And, it's hard to tell it's hard to say what I would do if I was in that situation, because I've never been in that situation, right? But the people I know who are in those situations, at least a few of the people I know who are very well-to-do and affluent, a few of them are very generous,
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't know if comparatively, how you put that, do you get a percentage, a percentage of what they have, but then there's a percentage of responsibilities to employees, you know what I mean? All these things fall down the line. And so it's not a steady line. It's kind of moving depending on a lot of things, but relationship keeps coming back to me. This idea of the relationship with the things you have. And if the relationship with your success, let's use that word to cover kind of everything. That covers your stuff, covers your business, covers your, all the things that you have. Your relationship with that is really what Jesus is going towards. It's how are you holding it up? Mm-hmm. And if you're holding it up is requiring so much of your energy that you can no longer hold up these other things that are part of the treasures in heaven, then you're in this place where you can't serve the two, right? And I don't think that looks the same for everyone, because everyone's relationship is different with the stuff.
Yeah.
And so it could be someone who has little stuff, but their relationship with it really holds on to them. Where, no, this is my car, and my car is my God, and I'm just going to, make sure nothing happens to it, and everything's about that, and I'm going to give up the things I could do because this is what's more important to me. It kind of can look like a lot of different things.
Yeah, and I'm sure it does in every household.
Yeah. And that's another thing. I mean, just in the household, having the dynamics of people living in a home and having different relationships with things that come in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, with Corrine and I, because Corrine's very generous. She's more generous than I am sometimes, and so when I feel that idea of scarcity, there's been times where money has been short and she's been generous. And I feel like, you're being generous with my money, it's like, she's working now, so it's like... But even that thought, right? It's like, it catches me. It's like, okay, why am I saying that? Is there validity to it? Is she not aware of things, or am I just having an evil eye? You know what I mean?
It's the same, like what Brian and Alex talked about, that feeling of cutting up credit cards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, but what if I need, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you kind of do, you go through all those emotions, and like,
Yeah.
It's the same in our house too. When, when I had the big corporate job and was making some money, it's like, it's easy to be generous. And now when it's not,
Mm-hmm.
but my wife still is, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? So there's those things too. And I'm like, okay, like, as long as we can pay rent.
Yeah. And gosh, so many things come to mind. I mean, there's so many places that it could go. Responsibility to save. Do you save money, or do you just spend it? Those kinds of things. Do you, are you wise with the money that you have because you see it as something that you're able to use, or are you, again, just, it consumes you, right? It consumes. And again, I know that I feed into this. I'm training a dog whose name is Cooper right now. And it's just going through Instagram, and in Instagram came up dog stuff and a dog collar, and the name Cooper was on the collar. It's like, that was just like, okay, who's listening to me talk to this dog all day and calling it, Cooper, and then just realizing it. But something in me says, I should get this collar for their dog, right? Just in my mind, it's like, oh yeah, I could get that. And that'd be so cool getting, and I was like, why? These people are well-to-do. They can get their own collar. I don't need to buy their dog a collar. Is it really because I want to please them? It was so strange that my mind went there, because I wouldn't have thought anything, but just that it had the dog's name on it. Yeah, I can spend $15, get a dog collar and buy it. It's like,
Yeah.
I don't need to buy a dog a collar. He's got a collar. He's got plenty of collars, and he can't read it. What does he care? So it's just interesting, that pull, to press and click, Oh,
Yeah.
look at that. I can get that, So
Prime one day.
I got some things in my list for Prime one day. So don't mention that yet. This mic was Prime one day.
It was?
Yeah, it was like half price. So
Deal of the day.
yeah, so see right now, treasure in heaven right here.
You love it when it's a gadget.
When it works out that way. Um, any other thoughts that you have or questions that you have,
Or comments.
or comments? There's the fruit in the fridge. I didn't take it out, but
No, I mean, I think really, you can. This is my thoughts.
okay.
The gist, right? Jesus saying that you can't serve God and mammon, and or saying that you can't, be beholden to a bunch of things and be His disciple at the same time. I think those are, like you said, those are convicting and those are worthy of some thought. And like I said, maybe taking stock of like, do I really put this before people or before Jesus or whatever it might be, right? Those are good questions to ask,
Yeah.
and they're hard to ask. But the gist of it is like, it's not like you said, money in itself is not evil. It's not. It's like I think of like TV or culture or music or movies, anything that we like, it can be good or bad.
Yeah.
And money is the same. It could be good or bad, right? If we are serving it, if we are beholden to it, if we are worshiping it, for a stronger word, then probably in a wrong spot to be moving forward in the kingdom, right?
Yeah.
But if we have the right relationship with those things, then I think it makes sense that we're bringing them along with us into the kingdom.
Yeah. I think that gets to, again, the relationship aspect of
Yeah.
it. I mean, and all these things are formational, right? They're forming who we are. Jason just sent a comment, not having much money, feeling guilty that he can't give as much as he would like. That shows a relationship that he has with what he has,
Yeah.
that he would like to do more, but he can only do so much,
Yeah. Yeah, I feel that.
and it would be a shame for someone to put a burden on, someone who doesn't have a lot to have to give because, I mean, we've all seen it on TV, and so many times I've heard this talk about giving to the church, and I wanted to stay away from that, right? I didn't want to say, so give
Yeah.
us your, because the treasures in heaven is not the church giving to the church. It's so much more. It could be, right? It could include those things. It could be part of that, but it's not, the giving to the church is not what it means, period, right? And so many times I've heard sermons where that's been the end result because they want the money to come into the church. But this is formational in our life, and it's a counter programming to maybe how we live in a world that sees only material things and doesn't take into consideration the mysterious relationship between us and each other and things, right? Because there is something mysterious, even the language that's used where, you're holding it up, or it has power over you.
Yeah.
All these things are interesting words to use for just things. We don't see, I think, many times that we are in relationship with things and cultures and people. And those relationships can go bad or go good. They can do well for us and for the things that seem to be what God cares about, which is people and helping and loving others, right? Or they can become that self-serving and everything is mine, and there's the hoarding and the getting those things. I know some people who are pretty well-to-do who hoard, and it's pretty strange to see the things that people hoard who have a lot of money. I mean, some of them are just like, this is cheap. What do you have this for, right? And it's broken. It's like, why would you hold? And I think that hoarding is almost a powerful illustration of what this idea is.
Yeah. Yeah, it's good. Any words of wisdom?
Let it be a smile. Well, Jason, thank you for chiming in. I know it's past your bedtime right about now. Um, Again, reminder, we will not be doing take two for the rest of this year. We're going to do it through November and December. So we will not be here next week. And we will see what happens the new year. But again, appreciate you guys for being here tonight. And you're welcome again to join us Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. here live or online, but we are meeting live. And nothing else happening this week, but we'll keep you posted on the other things that are happening soon. All right? All right, guys. Take care.